right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to StrikeUp Connects Exporting 101 with EDC and FITT. My name is Heather Cannings, and I am the lead for StrikeUp Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're not aware, the StrikeUp Connects webinar are a free platform that are offered throughout the year to continue to direct our women entrepreneurship community with online educational webinars, tools, and business resources offered by our growth partners. So you can catch any of our past webinars by heading to our website. And right now we're gearing up for our annual StrikeUp conference this February. So make sure to follow us on social media or sign up for our newsletter to stay updated on exciting speaker announcements and more. So just a quick note before we begin, the webinar will be recorded and a copy will be sent to all registrants post-event. So feel free to rewatch or share with your network. We also will have a live Q&A session after our speakers have presented. So please feel free to ask your questions in the chat throughout the session as they come up, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible today. So let's introduce our fabulous speakers we've got here today. So first, we are joined by Miriam Francisque, who is the National Lead for Inclusive Trade, Black and Racialized Exporters with Export Development Canada, or EDC. So as a former entrepreneur herself with experience across 3 continents, she brings unique insights and energy to her role at EDC, focusing on the specific needs of the Black and racialized business owners in exporting. With over 15 years of experience in international trade and business development, Miriam is dedicated to helping Canadian women entrepreneurs access capital, grow globally, and create generational wealth. Welcome, Miriam, a returning guest for StrikeUp.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me.
We are also joined today by Laura Rigudo, who is a certified international trade professional and a partnership and community lead with the Forum for International Trade Training, or FITT. So as a certified international trade professional, or CITP, Laura has a passion for international business development and a keen interest in finding strategic partnering opportunities between Canadian and Latin American businesses, with special interest in assisting small and medium-sized enterprises. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Laura.
Thank you.
So with that, I will pass it over to Miriam to provide us with a quick overview of EDC supports and services for exporters.
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to share my screen now. So thank you for having me again, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm just going to pull this up, and please, Heather, tell me when you can see it.
All good.
Okay, perfect. All right. It's taking a little while. I'm trying to do the slideshow. Okay. Can you see the first slide?
No, Miriam, can't see it.
No, not yet. Okay, sorry, it's coming up. I don't know why it's so slow. Oof.
There.
We're there now.
Wow, can see
Thank
it now.
you so much. Perfect. So EDC is Canada Export Credit Agency, and we're here today because I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of who we are and what we do. And obviously, you know, it's important that all communities, including women, Black, racialized, Indigenous, all benefit from the knowledge and the expertise that we have gathered and collected throughout the years. EDC has been around for 80 years now, and we celebrated our 80 years just this year. And so we've been building on the momentum in international trade and for the Canadian ecosystem that's been built related to the trade ecosystem. So I'm going to dispel a few myths right here, because, you know, typically people think that they're not exporters, that exporting is just for big companies and large companies and just the product manufacturers. Got to clear this out right now. No, if you're a service-based organization and you are providing your service offering to another country, you are considered an exporter. Exporting means that you are selling goods or services to another country and that you are getting paid. I also emphasize the getting paid part because if you are offering your services and your goods cross nations and not getting paid, you're not an exporter, you're a charity. So it's very different. You need to get a transaction happening between this flow of goods or services to be able to be considered an exporter. So exporters could be direct exporters, they could be indirect exporters, they could be born global. Again, there's lots of differences between what is real and what people think or businesses think when they're offering goods or services. So being a direct exporter means that you are selling your goods or offering your services directly to another company or to customers cross border. You are considered an indirect exporter when you're actually producing goods or providing services to companies that are exporting directly to customers across border. So, meaning that you will integrate their supply chains that would be built to sell cross border. So that is being an indirect exporter, and you can be supported as an exporter, whether you're direct or indirect through this definitions. So again, you could be also a exporter that has acquired those exporting opportunities over time, or you could be born global. So meaning that you have just set up your company, your startup, and you're actually just selling your products or your services that are destined for foreign markets. This is another reality that we've seen across those throughout those years. And yes, I put here, I'm not gonna stay too long on this slide, but just to give you a little sense of, what those exporting companies could be. Producing advanced manufacturing company, building components for a Canadian mining manufacturer. So this one is actually an indirect exporter. It could be an art firm that's selling its contracts to Germany. So again, art is part of services or products. Engineering firms, so if they're selling their expertise through service, it is considered an exporter. Software as well, because technology is also another sector that's very highlighted right now because we are very tech focused and we understand, all of this technological innovation that is happening in the market and around the world. So yes, those tech companies are exporting as well when they are providing their technologies, or technology services to other markets. Farming companies in agri-food are could be exporters, and also distributors of consumer goods that are opening up their services in another market are considered exporters. These are just a few examples, and yes, as Heather mentioned, you're going to have access to those slides later on to kind of remember a little bit of what we were talking about here. So as I mentioned in the beginning, can Export Development Canada, sorry about that, is an export credit agency, and so that means that our sole mandate is to support and help exporters grow internationally. And that means that we're providing different tools, different services to help them do so. We're working through different pillars, particularly for inclusive trade companies. Here we're talking more about women, but again, we are helping indigenous owned, black owned, racialized owned, all of the different underrepresented communities that exist in Canada and that are thriving towards a greater economic prosperity through export. So we're building awareness of all of the benefits, and this is what I'm doing here, where we provide those also examples, and we try to inspire with success stories, with different real case scenarios of businesses that we accompany in different markets. We educate different communities on what tools, what resources, what exists, what do they need to comply with, what are some of the regulations, and we partner with lots of different a string of partners to deliver on that educational piece, like FITT, the Forum for International Trade, and you're going to hear from Laura just a few minutes from now. And we also try to connect with the, and so here, the women entrepreneur ecosystem, but we're connected with all other communities to make sure they also have access to different pockets of education, of opportunities, of understanding of what it entails to be an exporting company. We're also enabling those businesses through different tools. So, as I mentioned, they could be financing tools, they could be tools that are mitigating risk. I'm just going to talk through it in the next slide. And the last one is really empowering those communities, getting access to what they need, and being there as a support to also create synergies, create ties, and make sure that we bridge all of those gaps that exist through institutional and organizational systems. So some of our solutions are, as I mentioned, so the first one could be the knowledge. So the knowledge, we are carrying different knowledge solutions, webinars, articles, podcasts. We also have a fantastic platform through myedc.ca that I all invite you to sign up to, where you can have access to market intelligence, to regulatory information. You can also type your questions through the platform, which is the Expert Help Hub, and you can get an answer that's particular to your specific needs. So this platform is really the one that we send all the exporters or the next exporters, so the exporters to be to, where they can really get access to the right specific information that can help draft their own strategies. The second piece is really the entrance, and the entrance is a staple of EDC and of what the export credit agencies are also carrying, because this tool really helps you mitigate the risk when you're trying to enter a new market or build your plan, where it covers 90% of the volumes of your contract, where you really against default of payment. So you have the guarantee and the comfort of getting paid at least 90% of the contract, no matter what happens when it's in a difficult situations that you're meeting with your customers beyond your borders. The third piece is the financing. So typically, again, because of the specific aspect of foreign jurisdictions that obviously exporting is comprised of, where you are exporting and you need access to working capital solutions, to a capital to grow, or to have a new entity, or to even set up a warehouse, open up a new shop, whatever it is, you need access to that capital. And the banks typically, traditionally, do not like to lend money against foreign account receivables. So this is where we come in and we provide guarantees, different type of bonds, and different type of financing solutions to work with banking partners. And finally, the last piece, which is the connections, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, where we connect you with all of the different organizations, and sometimes with also corporations that are looking for companies like yourself, and where they want to procure from Canadian suppliers. And if we have an opportunity that we have for you, we'll be reaching out to you to help you get access to those. And so finally, if you want to continue the conversation and you have more questions about EDC, about how to work with EDC, what we could do to help you in your global expansion plans, please feel free to connect with either myself, so Miriam, or Catherine Beach, my colleague covering the Women in Trade at EDC, and we'll be able to help you draft those strategies or guide you to the right partners. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Miriam. With so many supports that are offered through EDC, there's so many opportunities. We really appreciate your quick overview there. You've got things from credit and performance security insurance to financing, working capital solutions. EDC is an incredible resource for entrepreneurs who are looking to grow globally. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll pass it on to Laura, who's going to be covering how to assess whether exporting is right for your business and which strategies can help you achieve that growth, as well as walk through some important considerations you'll need to learn to plan for international business growth. So over to you, Laura.
Great. Thank you, Heather. And thank you, Miriam. That was great. And I love coming after EDC because it does make my job easier. So as Miriam mentioned, I'm with FITT, the Forum, Heather mentioned Forum for International Trade Training. Miriam talked about EDC. And I just want to stop and pause here on this title slide because you'll see that this presentation is co-branded FITT EDC. So FITT, we are a not-for-profit. We are the global leader in international trade training and the certification of international trade professionals. Our learning center is co-branded with EDC. It's the FITT EDC Learning Center. So what I'm going to be presenting to you today is part of our learning center. So our whole, we all, and so many of our international trade ecosystem partners like EDC, Trade Commissioner Service, multiple organizations, we all want the same thing for you entrepreneurs. We want to see you grow and succeed in international markets. But the way we come at this is that without trade capable people, trade doesn't just happen. You don't just start exporting unless you learn what it takes to get your product across international borders, because it's a whole new skill set. And today I'm going to highlight some of those areas that you probably haven't even considered when you're crossing, when you're shipping your goods across borders or delivering your service in international markets. So that's all I would like to do today, just to expose you to certain areas, considerations, and tell you a little bit about the consequences of not planning to export and not having that knowledge in order to help your company grow. So let's get started. And it's not advancing. Let's see here. There we go. All right. Just a little bit about myself. I know that Heather, you gave a little bit of a bio. Just to let you know that I have many years of experience coaching companies such as yourself. I'm really glad that Miriam mentioned at the onset that if your product is available in an international market, whether it's directly to the buyer or through another exporter, you are an exporter and you're never too small. I've coached many companies, many of them are small business over the years. And whether you're a large business, small business, if you're exporting, you need to learn what it takes to export. Okay, I'm going to quickly go over everything from export readiness and market feasibility to a little bit of touching on a little bit of supply chain logistics and trade finance. So let's get started. But before we do that, I guess I'd have to minimize my screen, but I'd like to know if you're currently exporting, now that you know what exporting is or how you would define, and Miriam dispelled that myth. So let me know if you're currently exporting, which markets you're currently exporting to, drop it in the chat. Markets that you're interested in exporting to next, and maybe just a little bit about your biggest challenge. And let me see here, I'm gonna pull up the chat. I don't see anything coming in the chat. You can drop that. Otherwise, I will continue. I'll give you a second to respond. Okay. In any case, so sorry, Heather, you're going to have to let me know. Is it back to what are you seeing on the screen?
I'm seeing your presentation, but it's the main PowerPoint load page. It's not in presenter mode.
Okay, let me stop share and then I'll reshare.
I see one comment in the chat where I think, it's so
been afraid to export.
Jenna, yeah, being afraid to export anything. So I'm sure your presentation, Laura, will definitely help a lot.
Okay, and then I see something homefinally.ca, I mean ship. Okay, so let's jump in. Let me reshare. Um, are we good?
All good.
Okay, so well, if you're afraid to ship, if you're afraid to start if you're afraid to start exporting, it's good. It's actually not a bad thing because it just means that you probably will need to do some research. You'll need to understand if you're truly ready to start exporting, because just because you want to start exporting doesn't mean that you should or that you're ready to start exporting. So we're going to go a little bit through the motivation, determining your who and why, characteristics of export ready organizations, and hopefully you'll do, as I'm talking, a little bit of a self-assessment, and then I'll show you a tool to do a readiness assessment. So motivational factor. So often companies, it's not a matter of should I start exporting? Sometimes it's a matter of, in order to survive, I need to look for new customers. And often those new customers aren't in your domestic markets. So you might need to, look for customers in international markets. You may need to increase your own competitiveness. And sometimes a way of increasing your own competitiveness is to employ a unique technology and expertise from a foreign market. Perhaps they're more advanced in a certain region of the world, and if you partner with someone in that region, you will adopt their technology and innovation, so increasing your own capabilities, and likely it's going to be part of your long-term expansion strategy. So knowing what your motivational factor is key, because you've got to know your goals and what your motivation is in order to determine who needs to be involved, who needs to know that. So whether it's your board members, your investors, your executives like the CFO, finance needs to know what your goal is so that they can help set aside, budgets to go overseas, to take part in international trade shows, for example, and trade missions. And operations needs to know what your motivational factor is. So just as a little example, I was working as an export manager for a manufacturing company, small to medium-sized manufacturing company, just in Ontario. And we had customers in the United States. And when I was hired and came on board as an international trade professional, I started assessing what we needed to do in order to grow. And there was an opportunity in Mexico. So operations actually gave me a really hard time because they couldn't understand, well, we've got customers in the United States, but 80% of our customers, it was one customer in the United States. So what if that one customer decided to source their products from another supplier? That would have meant that 80% of our business would have been gone overnight, with a change of, one person deciding, no, we're gonna start working with your competitor. So they couldn't see the long-term game. And so I had to convince operations that we needed to get our product certified so it could be exported to Mexico, and it was all kinds of regulatory piece, and it had to pass. It had to get a new certification, and they couldn't see why they felt that I was just doing a make work project. So you've got to clearly articulate what your goals are, why you're looking to enter into a new market, so that you can relay those goals and that strategy to everyone that needs to be involved, including operations. Characteristics of successful exporting operations is that you're successful domestically. Or some, as Miriam said, some companies are born to export. They're born global because their market, they've created a product or a service that is for an international market. But in most cases, you're successful domestically. You're unique in one or more ways. There has to be, you have to have that unique value proposition. There has to be something about your product or service that's unique. And you must be competitively priced. Have a solid domestic business plan with proven effectiveness. I'm not saying that you just take your domestic business plan and then just insert, instead of your customer down the road, you insert a foreign country. You can't do that. There are certain aspects that need to change, obviously, in your domestic business plan to go international. But you have to have a solid domestic business plan, have specific advantages over the competition, willingness, this point is key, willing to invest resources. Time takes more time. You're trying to find a customer that may be, halfway across the world, a few oceans apart. So time, do you, invest people? So who are you within your organization? And many of you, I'm sure, are small organizations. So who is going to be that champion that is going to project manage this international expansion journey? So you're going to be taking, people off of certain projects and putting them onto this international expansion. And capital. It takes money. It takes money in any market, but it's going to take perhaps a little bit more money if you're going to export. And you may be without a return for a period of time. So, and the last part is that you must be sensitive, or successful companies understand that there are cultural differences in doing business in other countries, and that cannot be underestimated. So, understanding, are we truly ready? You will have to do a gap analysis. You'll have to assess your current state. Do you have the people? Do you have the capital? Understanding that, where you're at right now. Are you truly ready to start exporting? So there is a tool that I have here on the screen. It's an export quiz, an export readiness quiz from the Trade Commissioner service. So you can see the link here. Just to let you know, I will be sending, Heather will be sending a copy of this, a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation. So you don't need to take anything down. You can click on, it's hyperlinked, so you can click on it. It's a series of 15 questions that helps you assess if you're truly ready to start exporting, and will flush out some of those gaps, because you have to define those gaps. The gaps might be that you don't have someone with international trade or international business development experience. You don't have someone that with knowledge of that part of the world. So that might be something where you go, well, we need to hire an international sales manager. We need to hire a sales manager. Maybe I should be looking for, experience in international sales and marketing, or experience in international business development, something. So defining your gaps, addressing those gaps, very important. Market feasibility. Not every market is feasible for you. Sometimes companies, especially small size companies, will react to an inquiry that lands in their inbox. Might be great. Oh, this foreign buyer wants to buy or implement our platform, but is it really feasible to export to that country? You may end up, your landed costs might outweigh what you would actually charge in that market. So screen the market for size, growth, accessibility. Can you actually export to that market? Are there restrictions that you can't comply with? So looking at the whole feasibility part, establishing market priorities. 5 markets cannot be market priorities. It takes a lot to truly do the research to understand a target market. Imagine trying to research 5 target markets at the same time. I always say that, you're really a target market should be one. A market priority should be one. So looking at market priorities, market research, having that primary research, having that versus secondary research. So secondary research, desk research, EDC, Miriam talked about the export help hub. There's so much information there. That's a good source of secondary research. There are market reports. Trade Commissioner Service as well has market reports for Canadian companies, depending on the region you want to go to, and it's broken down into priority sectors. So you might find market research reports that are there already. Sometimes though, you need that primary research. And I always say the best source of primary research is a trade show or a trade mission. Because you go to a trade show, and I've done more trade shows than I care to ever mention. They're exhausting. It's like running a marathon, but you do run it for 3 days. But everybody's under one roof. And so you can talk to buyers, you can talk to potential channel partners like distributors, or you talk to potential joint venture partners, strategic partners, all under one roof. So you don't have to travel. You just go to a meeting room at the trade show, you sit down, you have coffee together, and typically amazing conversations sprout from there. So I would say get connected, find out what trade shows, what are the prominent trade shows in your industry, and get out there and meet with other partners in your space at a trade show. Typically it is money well spent. Trade missions are another way. Trade mission organized maybe by the Canadian government, your provincial government, get onto a trade mission, and then they arrange B2B. Often there's a B2B matchmaking component to that. So that is a great source of primary research. Sometimes though, not everything like in secondary research I mentioned, but sometimes you can't find that information that you need. So sometimes you need specialized assistance and to get that information. So maybe you need it for your pitch deck. Maybe you're trying to get investors and you're going through investment round, and you need to get that information to show the potential in your market. And you might need to get specialized assistance, a specialized market research agency that can find that piece. I know I did with a technology company that I was working with. We were trying to, prepare a pitch deck, and we were missing that it was forecasting where the market was going to go. So we hired a market research firm that was able to get that for us. So sometimes you have to, it's money well spent. You look at the ROI of hiring someone else that can find the information that you're looking for. Assessing market potential, truly assessing, is there potential in that market? Your costs, assessing your costs. That cost analysis, cost benefit analysis is paramount. Understanding, so for those of you that are listening today, understanding if you have a product, understanding what the landed cost is. And our training does a great job. FITT Skills training does a great job in working you through exactly what you need to include in your landed costs. Clearing your product through customs, getting your product, loading your product onto a vessel, and then the clearance fees, inspection fees, and then when the shipping, obviously getting your product into your international target market, unloading, who pays for that, clearance at that end. Do you need a special, what if you don't have a specific document that's required? And understanding what the complete picture is, because then and only then can you determine if it's feasible to export to that market. Understanding the risks involved. Will the country, are they known for volatility politically, and change in policy may really affect your ability to deliver your product or service in that market. And again, I mentioned margins to be earned. And Miriam, you mentioned that from the onset. Unless you're going to get paid, unless you're going to make money, why export in the first place? It's a lot. But you can potentially, studies have shown that companies that export are more successful than companies that don't. So there is a lot of potential there for your growth, except that you need to be earning a margin. So understanding that whole market feasibility, suitability of your products and services. So how do you need to adapt your product or service for the market? Regulatory compliance. What are the regulations in that market? Understanding the full picture, that whole regulatory compliance piece. IP protection. Will your IP be protected in that market? So you have to do an assessment of that and what will it take. And product liability. There is risk involved there, but you need to be aware of the risk in terms of product liability and devise strategies to overcome that. Now I probably scared you. Now you're the person that mentioned, I'm too afraid to start exporting. I'm afraid that I've scared you maybe even more. No, but the whole thing, and I'm going over this very high level. I'm looking at the time too, because it's just important to know what you're getting into. And as I mentioned, companies that export are more successful, are like 25% more successful than companies that don't. Typically, studies have shown. So it is important, and if it's part of your long-term growth, then you need to take a strategic approach to exporting and go through these areas step by step. So a little bit on adaptation options, everything from making no or only minor changes. Maybe you just need to change the label. How many times have you purchase something, I don't know, a product, and then you see the label on there. They've put a label on so that they can sell it in the stores here in Canada. You know, they've English and French and calorie count, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of minor changes. Making changes for compliance reasons, maybe like in the industry where I was with the manufacturer, we had safety considerations. So we had to make sure that we changed the product according to the safety regulations in the markets. Maybe you make changes for marketability. Maybe if you're a food and beverage company, you're making changes because you're exporting into a market that likes their food spicier. Maybe likes it, maybe not so sweet, etc. So those are examples of making changes for marketability reasons. Or maybe you make a product to truly create a global product. I'm thinking the Apple, the iPhone, you know, it's truly like looks the same whether you're purchasing it here or in any market around the globe. Market entry modes, you have direct or indirect exporting on the left-hand side. These are trading entry strategies. In the middle, you have transfer related. Could look at licensing, franchising, subcontracting. So I don't know who's on this call today or who's listening, but you know, you look at there, you have different options to enter into a market. Typically, we're on the left-hand side, especially if you're starting out. It would be through indirect direct exporting, whether e-commerce is involved or not. Typically on the left-hand side, and then you go all the way over, like to the right-hand side, the other end of the spectrum. It's typically for more advanced companies that are on a more advanced stage of their export journey. They might open up a branch office or a representation office. I would not recommend those if you're just starting to export to open up a branch office in a target market. I mean, perhaps joint ventures, greenfield, brownfield, or mergers and acquisitions. But we're going to focus more, I'm talking more about trade, direct or indirect exporting. International sales and marketing. This is a topic that I absolutely love. I actually have been teaching this course for 10 years at Durham College. And I did a webinar just a few weeks ago with Export Development Canada, which was about crafting your international sales and marketing strategy for different target markets. And just high level, what I mentioned and what's important here is that it cannot be cookie cutter. So you create your international sales and marketing plan, and you can't just cut and paste and insert the country B for country A and just have the same marketing mix. So when I'm talking about marketing mix, product, price, place, promotion, you need to modify the mix. You need to change the mix depending on the market. And what's important is the interconnectivity between the four elements of the marketing mix. So understanding that maybe you're going into the United States with one product line, or let's say you have a technology platform software. You might be going, you might have to change that up if you're going into Spain, for example, right? So your product, or if you're selling products, you may not sell the same product line that you're selling into the United States, in Spain, or the Asia Pacific. So you might change your product up. Your price, there are unique pricing considerations. If you're going into another market, what currency are you going to quote your product? Or like what currency are you going to quote? What Incoterm are you going to use? And so Incoterms, international commercial terms. So for everybody on the line that has a product that you're moving, you need to know what Incoterms are, because you can't quote a price. Well, you could, but you shouldn't quote a price without quoting two things: an Incoterm and the exchange rate. Right? Because an Incoterm determines who is going to pay. So there's, just in a nutshell, there's a big difference between telling your, I don't know, your Japanese buyer that I'm going to make my kayaks available at my factory in Oshawa. You can pick them up and then you arrange for shipping and get it to Japan. There's a big difference in that price. That would be X works. Or I'm going to sell you my kayaks, CIF, cost, insurance, and freight, to a port in Japan. So you can think about, and all the costs in between. So understanding, if you are a product exporter, if it's the sale of goods, you need to quote your price with a currency, whether it's Canadian dollars, Japanese yen, whatever that might be, and an Incoterm. And then how you're going to place your product. Are you going to place your product through a distributor? Are you going to go direct to the end, like to the retailer? Or is it going to be e-commerce? Because you can't price yourself. Like, how do you know what to price yourself unless you know where you're going to place your product through? And then depending on what your price is, that's going to determine your promotional strategies. Or as well, if you're working with a channel partner and they force you to do co-marketing or promotions, if you're selling through marketplaces, they have a mandatory marketing fee. I know with some of them, marketplaces, I know what those monthly marketing fees are, promotional fees. So I'm saying understand your marketing mix for each market, and you have to figure out those four elements for each individual target market. And then you have to think about after sales service and support, which looks very different again per market. E-commerce operations, there's a wealth of resources out there, but understanding unique considerations like localizing your sites for international markets. What does that look like for your business? This is a success story. I don't have time really to go through this, but this is perhaps an entrepreneur like yourself that started off small, success in Eastern Canada, then with that success went to look to the US market. How she did that, and this is what I was talking about before, participated in trade missions, B2B matchmaking, landed, determined after the research, determined that that they were going to list their products, that e-commerce was the solution, how they were going to place the product in the market, and they used a portal called FAIR. So, and then the success that came from that. Some resources for you. This is going to be in the deck that I'll provide. This is another success story. So I'm going to skip over that because I just wanted to touch, I'm looking at the time. Supply chain and logistics. I will not read every bullet here, but understanding we have a whole course on global value chain, which goes through all of this because there are a lot of considerations that you probably haven't even had top of mind but there's a methodical approach to going through all of this, whether it's inbound, outbound logistics, support activities. So there's a lot here, and I don't want to scare everyone, including those that mentioned that they are afraid. But it's all about, and I don't want to do a lot of fear mongering, but it's all about understanding that you need to be strategic. You just need to start, and you need to start planning or hire someone that can help you work through and manage this product, this project. International trade finance, Miriam mentioned that. EDC offers, some financing tools for you. You have to think, I mentioned currency, think of currency risk, country risk, cash flow. Do you need working capital so that you can produce it, or you can develop that platform, that software? So, and understanding, sometimes it's just about understanding what assistance and tools and resources are out there for you. That regulatory landscape, I know that I touched on it a little bit with regulatory compliance, but ignorance is not bliss. I just want to say that. So when you're going into a market, you need to understand what the legal landscape is. I have a point here, and ethical issues as well, right? Because there may be ethical issues in certain markets that you're going into. Maybe someone will try to bribe you so that you can get your product across, through customs. That is not, that is a no-no. And so again, ignorance is not bliss. You could end up in jail for that. But free trade agreement is really important. Canada signed a free trade agreement, I believe with 17 or 18 countries or regions. So it's important. I'm not saying that you should only export to a country that has a free trade agreement, but understanding that if there is a free trade agreement with a country, it does offer a huge advantage for Canadian companies. So take a look at that. Know what the tariff rate is. If like in countries, know what tariff rate is in any kind of market, but if there's a free trade agreement, if the tariff rate is not zero, look at the phase-in period for the tariff reduction. And that, if you've got all of a sudden as a Canadian exporter, if you've got a 10% advantage, so I'm looking at Chile because I work for the government of Chile. Canada-Chile free trade agreement went into effect 1998. So all of a sudden, it meant that Canadian companies exporting to Chile had a 6.5% tariff advantage because the uniform tariff was 6.5% for all countries that didn't have a free trade agreement with Chile. So a 6.5% tariff advantage, when you're thinking about that in terms of your pricing, that could be a real advantage for your company. So look at free trade agreements. I've gone through all of this, these very quickly, all these areas, but what I want to show you is that all this material, what I've just highlighted, is taken from our FITT Skills training. Here's the name of the courses. We have 6 main courses, and I would like to offer you today something that we've never done before, a 30%, 35% discount on any FITT Skills training or courses or workshops just for a limited time. It's a huge offer till October 15th, because I really, truly believe that if you take a methodical approach to exporting and get trained and upskill yourself or nominate a champion within your company to do the training, it will save you money and headaches and time down the road, because if you're strategic about this, it'll lead to long-term success. So I'm offering this to you. I'm going to have it in the presentation tomorrow so you can take advantage. You need to use the code. So I have tools resources that I will also have, but I'm not going to go over them. I'll entertain questions now.
Amazing. There was so much information in there, and clearly exporting is a complicated thing, but can be very lucrative and incredible growth move for your business. We did have a question from Kathleen asking if the courses can be funded through student loans. Not sure if you.
Are through a student loan?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know you can message me. So Laura at FITT, I'm going to write that in, Laura at fit.ca. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. Sometimes with export, sometimes there are funds and grants for upskilling, for human resource, like professional development. So sometimes under certain funds, you could include fit skills training, but I'd have to kind of work through it like with you together. Like I'll have to think about that. But sure, just message me and I'll get my team to help give you an answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know we're at about time here now. Apologies that we started a little late there, but want to thank Miriam and Laura so much for your incredible wealth of knowledge you've been able to share here today. Miriam, I know, is throwing a ton of really incredible links into the chat for you. As mentioned, we'll have this presentation for you, which we will send tomorrow, along with a link to rewatch this recording and a good summary here of a bunch of those resource links. Much, much appreciated. Just want to also add, we will be sending in that summary email some links to two webinars we'll have in October celebrating Small Business Week. So one will be reviewing the state of women entrepreneurship in Canada, a report that we'll be looking at with the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, and a really exciting webinar as well with BDC. So they're looking at adapting tomorrow, key trends and solutions for your business. So a BDC economist is going to look at the trends in the upcoming next 5 years. So we'll send you some links to those, some really incredible resources. I really encourage you to connect both with EDC and FITT if you want to take on that exporting journey. If you're there, if you're considering it, if you're already in the process, take advantage of the resources that they have. And thank you so much, Laura, for providing that discount code as well, we will share with you all as well. I want to thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next StrikeUP Connects webinar event. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.